Welcome to the hidden corners where truth and terror collide. Discover a realm where the lines between the living and the supernatural blur as you embark on a journey to the paranormal and visit the mysterious hidden corners of your mind.
Well, welcome to the Wolfman Chronicles. This is Chapter 3 of Book 9, Episode 105. Now, this episode takes place in India. The title, Jungle Rescue, Fighting Human Traffickers in India. The smoke from cooking fires curled above the village as dusk fell, shadows stretching long and thin across the dirt paths. The air held the scent of cardamom and smoke, but beneath it lingered something sour, fear. Jack and Sasha carried a satchel of medical supplies to a small house on the water's edge. The tide lapped against the stilts beneath the porch, and the sound blending with the hum of bees in the air. And it was here that they would meet up with Nadia, who had stayed behind to help the grieving family. Now the Sundarban mangrove forest pressed in close, its canopy dark and alive with the calls of unseen creatures. Fireflies blinked between the thick banyan roots, their lights flashing like tiny beacons in the gloom. The house was little more than a shack, patched together with bamboo, salvaged tin, and palm thatch. Inside, the air carried the heaviness of sorrow. A woman sat on the floor, her sari torn at the edge, her hands twisting the fabric as she wept silently. An older man, her father perhaps, stared out the window toward the black silhouette of the jungle as if daring it to return what it had stolen. Nadia knelt beside the woman, murmuring soft, reassuring words in her own language. Though the woman did not understand what she was saying, she appreciated the kindness in their tone. She glanced up as Jack and Sasha entered, her eyes shadowed by fatigue. Her husband is a honey gatherer. He left 3 days ago and has not returned. Her only daughter was taken 2 nights ago. It's the same story, just a growl in the darkness, the shadow with stripes. No one has dared to leave their homes to follow. Fear is a living thing in the Sundarbans. It clings to the air as tangibly as the mist rising from the mangroves. For generations, villagers have spoken of tigers, how they stalk silently between the roots, how their eyes glow in the moonlight, how entire families have been left shattered after a single strike. Yet, for all their fear, no one can stay away from the forest. The mangroves are a lifeline. Honey gatherers brave tigers and snakes and crocodiles to scrape what little they can of the golden nectar into jars. The fishermen pole their boats through crocodile-thick waters, casting nets where the shadows lay deepest in hope for a large enough catch to feed their family and to sell at the local fish market. And woodcutters, they slip between the roots to collect fuel for cooking fires. If they stayed away from the forest, there would be no money for rent, no rice in their bowls, and no chance of paying off the mounting debts that the landlords press upon them. But each step into the forest is a battle against the panic coiled in their chests. Entire households carry the invisible scars of fear. Men who drank to silence their terror, women who weep silently while stirring pots of lentils, and children whose laughter has grown rare. And now, with the Tiger King myth spreading like wildfire, that old terror has reached a feverish pitch. Villagers no longer know where the legend ends and reality begins. Jack, Sasha, Nadia, and Dara had spent the last several days among the villagers, not as strangers on a mission, but as allies, listening, working, and easing burdens where they could. It was the only way to earn trust in a place where fear had stolen even the comfort of neighborly voices. Each morning, Sasha opened the satchel of medical supplies by the water's edge. She treated festering cuts from fishing nets, bee stings from honey gathering, and the endless coughs born of damp huts and smoky fires. She spoke gently, often slipping a hand into her patient's palms as though she could steady their trembling from the inside. Dara moved with her, not only translating in Bengali, but carrying a quiet empathy that no language barrier could block. She listened to the mother's laments, offered herbs gathered from the forest, and sat with children that were too anxious to sleep. Sasha sang soft lullabies in Ukrainian and Russian. Lullabies foreign to their ears, but soothing nonetheless. And Jack, he helped the men in any way he could. He mended nets, he sharpened machetes, and helped repair boats. His presence a reminder that not all outsiders came with empty promises. He helped carry water, he hauled wood, and he shared meals of rice and dried fish. And at night, he sat with the elders beneath flickering lanterns and listened to their stories of tigers, of debts crushing families into ruin, and of children gone into the shadows. One night, as the group gathered on the porch of a small fisherman's hut, Sasha leaned back exhausted. "We're doing good here, but we're only treating wounds, Jack. We're not stopping the bleeding. We could spend the rest of our lives here and never see an end to the struggle." Jack's eyes were shadowed with the depth of understanding. They're trapped in a cycle. Debt, fear, labor in the forest, more fear. The traffickers, they know it, and they use it to their advantage. And I agree with you, Sasha. We could spend our entire lives here just putting on bandages while the real crux of the problem remains out there. He nodded towards the forest. The longer we stay here, the more that we realize that this problem is far larger than just one rescue organization can solve. And Dara nodded slowly at that. She'd been on rescue missions all over the world, and she knew both how exhilarating it could be to witness and take part in rescuing children from the clutches of ruthless traffickers, and how defeating it could feel when you realized it was only one small drop in the bucket of a much larger problem. "Jack, you have to remember that every single life is worth saving," she said quietly. "You may not stop the tide, but for one child, one family, you are changing their entire world." Sasha placed a hand on Jack's arm, her touch grounding him. "Dara's right. We can't measure this in numbers, we measure it in faces. Each child brought home, each mother who doesn't have to grieve." Jack exhaled slowly. He wanted to argue, but the truth was undeniable. His wolf, restless and impatient, wanted to strike at the heart of the enemy, to tear apart the trafficker's network root and branch. But the man in him knew the reality, that global webs of corruption, poverty, and greed couldn't be unraveled in a single night. Nadia's voice cut through the heavy silence. "We may not end the problem, but we can shine a light into the darkness. For some, that light will be the difference between life and death." She instinctively held a hand to her belly, feeling a slight kick and the stirring of the tiny life she carried. Her eyes softened, and a faint smile crossed her lips, though it was shadowed by worry. "We need to do whatever we can do to make this a better world for the ones still on their way." The jungle beyond the village hissed with the sounds of insects and the distinct call of a night bird. Jack gazed into that darkness, his jaw tightening. "You're right," he admitted. "One child, one life. That's where we start. And if we can rip even one stone out of the foundation of this whole rotten structure, then maybe, just maybe, eventually it'll all come down." Dara's lips curved into a grim smile. Then let's make sure tomorrow isn't just another bandage. Let's make it a strike that counts. The four of them sat in silence for a moment, just listening to the sounds of the forest. Jack sat forward, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped together. The wolf in him ached for battle, for the raw simplicity of tearing apart those who preyed on the weak. But the man understood something deeper now. He looked at Nadia's hand on her belly and thought of all the children hidden away, waiting for someone to come. "You're right," he said, his voice steady. "We can't let the size of the problem paralyze us. We do what's in front of us, one child, one family, one village at a time. And that's how we fight back. That's how we make this a better world. For your child, Nadia, and for every child." The night pressed closer, the forest alive with its haunting chorus. Yet around them, a quiet resolve had taken root. Tomorrow, the hunt would begin anew. The morning sun shone brightly on the river's surface as Jack and Sasha, Nadia, Dara, they all made their way to the shaded veranda of a modest building overlooking the Sundarbans. And it was here that they would meet Bikash Das, a man whose name carried weight among those working to fight trafficking in the region. Now Mr. Das greeted them warmly, his eyes sharp with conviction. He was the kind of a presence born from years of standing firm against injustice, even when the odds seemed impossible. Now the villagers respected him, traffickers feared him, and agencies all across eastern India knew him as a relentless advocate for the vulnerable. And over cups of steaming tea, he spoke plainly about the crisis that haunted the Sundarbans. Many of the girls who go missing are deceived, he explained. They're offered false promises of employment in the city or marriage proposals that seem legitimate. Their families are desperate. Poverty leaves them with little choice but to trust these offers. And once the girls are taken, they are forced into brothels or into hard labor as domestic servants. They vanish into the network of traffickers, and too often, no one dares to question it. Nadia shifted uncomfortably, her hand brushing her belly. "And the families? They have no way to fight back?" Das shook his head. "No, most cannot. Debt, illiteracy, and fear silence them. And that is why organizations like ours exist. In 2016, we founded the Basurat Initiative for Rural Dedication, BIRD, the acronym, to break that silence. And we provide legal aid, counseling, and shelter for all survivors. We pressure police to investigate. We can educate families so that they recognize the lies before it's too late. Every girl rescued is a victory. Yeah, but the networks are vast, and they adapt quickly." Sasha leaned forward. "And the survivors? How do they begin to rebuild after such trauma?" Das's gaze hardened, but his voice held steady. "Well, it's not easy. The stigma in their communities is often as cruel as the traffickers themselves. But with support, safe housing, therapy, opportunities for education, some find their voices again. And once someone learns about what these women have endured," he added quietly, "it becomes impossible to unsee it." Jack studied the man, feeling both the admiration and the familiar weight of rage pressing against his ribs. He knew the fight, the long war against shadows, where every single victory was small, every failure devastating. Dara broke the silence that followed. "Well, we're here to help, but we keep hitting dead ends and brick walls." Das nodded slowly. "You start where the fear is loudest. As you know, the Tiger King myth is not just a story. It is a mask that the traffickers are using. Strip away that mask, you'll find the same machinery of greed underneath it. If we work together, your strength and our networks, we can bring the children home. But understand, this is not a battle that ends with just one raid. It's a war fought every single day." The sun climbed higher, its reflection scattering across the delta waters. For the first time in days, Jack felt something stir against the weight of despair. It wasn't hope, not yet, but it was a new resolve, sharpened by the fire in Bikash Das's eyes. Well, the small boat pushed off from the riverbank, its hull creaking as it slid into the sluggish waters of the delta. Jack sat near the bow, eyes scanning the shifting maze of mangrove roots. Behind him, Sasha adjusted the satchel of medical supplies, though both knew that this trip would demand more than just medicine. Nadia and Dara sat together, their faces set, while Bikash Das steered them steadily into the green labyrinth. "Oh, the traffickers don't use roads," Bikash said, his voice low so that it didn't carry across the still waters. "Too many eyes. They move by river, where it is easy to disappear. The Sundarbans are perfect for them, dense, remote, and full of fear." Jack watched the mangroves close in around them, roots tangling like the claws of some great beast. The water shimmered with reflected sunlight, though shadow pulled beneath the branches. It was easy to see how myth thrived here. Even he, with his sharpened senses, felt the weight of unseen eyes. "Oh, where are we headed?" Dara asked, resting a hand on the machete laid across her knees. "There is an island, half abandoned after a cyclone destroyed most of the huts years ago," Bikash explained. "But the traffickers rebuilt some of it. The villagers whisper that it is cursed, haunted by the Tiger King, and that keeps them away, which is exactly what the traffickers want." Sasha frowned. "You know, I think that's where we went before, the same place where Jack encountered the tiger." Das's mouth tightened. "Well, that could be, but there are many islands, and traffickers move quickly. The younger girls are taken to the brothels in Kolkata, Dhaka, even farther. Boys may be sold into bonded labor. Every hour counts." The silence that followed was heavy. Nadia placed a hand on her belly, her other hand gripping the side of the boat. The gentle rocking was making her feel woozy. Well, they drifted deeper into the forest channels, navigating waters that narrowed and widened unpredictably. A kingfisher flashed blue across their path before vanishing into the canopy. A crocodile slipped silently from the bank, its eyes gleaming just above the waterline. "Bikash," he raised a hand, signaling for silence. He pointed ahead. On the far bank of a widening creek, a crude shrine rose from the mud. Stripes of paint, white and orange, were smeared across its surface, depicting the snarling visage of a tiger. And around it, garlands of withered flowers and broken clay pots lay scattered. "Even statues of Bombibi have been desecrated here," Jack muttered, "almost as if they've been tagged with tiger graffiti." Das nodded. "Yeah, the traffickers staged these shrines, blended myth with menace. The villagers fear the Tiger King's wrath if they trespass or come close to Bombibi's shrine." Nadia whispered a prayer under her breath and placed a jar of honey at the base of the shrine as they passed. She knew the traffickers had staged much of this, but she also knew the villagers' faith. Respect mattered. As the boat turned to bend, Bikash slowed his paddle, and ahead, an island emerged from the green haze. It was larger than the one Jack remembered. The remains of huts leaned crookedly like broken teeth, and smoke curled faintly above the tree line. "Someone's here," Sasha murmured. Das glided them into a patch of reeds, grounding the boat in silence. "From here, we walk. We stay close. The traffickers use scouts, and the mangroves hide more than crocodiles." They all disembarked quietly, boots sinking into mud that clung with every step. Jack felt the wolf stirring. His senses were sharpening. Every sound, every scent was heightened. He caught the smell of smoke, sweat, and something else. Fear. Children's fear. They moved through the undergrowth, following a narrow trail that cut between the roots. The forest muffled sound, forcing them to step carefully, and soon they reached the edge of a clearing. From their vantage, they saw the hideout. Ramshackle huts patched with tarps clustered around a central fire. Men lounged with rifles slung across their shoulders and machetes in their laps, their laughter harsh in the quiet. A makeshift cage of bamboo stood nearby, and inside, Jack glimpsed movement. Small figures huddled together, eyes wide. Nadia's breath caught. The cage, it's holding children. Sasha gripped Jack's arm. We found them. Mikasha's expression hardened. Now comes the hard part. Jack crouched low, scanning the clearing. He counted 7 men immediately, maybe more inside the huts. They were armed, but not disciplined. Smugglers, opportunists, traffickers, the sort who thrived in places where laws struggled to reach. The wolf in him snarled for release, eager to rip through them all. But Jack forced control. They couldn't risk a bloodbath, not with the children so close. We need a plan, he whispered. Dara's eyes never left the guards. We can't wait long. Sooner or later, they'll move 'em. Sasha looked at Bikash. You've been here before. How do you usually approach this? Daz's jaw set. Yeah, usually we don't. We gather evidence, we alert the authorities, and pray they act in time. But today, his gaze flickered to the cage. Today, we cannot wait. Jack felt the decision forming in his chest. The traffickers had the advantage of numbers, but he and his friends carried something far stronger. The will to protect. He glanced at Sasha, Nadia, Dara, and finally Bikash. We go in quiet, Jack said. We take down who we can without alerting the rest. When they're distracted, we free the children and we get them to the boat. If it turns into a fight, his voice dropped, edged with the growl of the beast within, I'll handle it. Bikash studied him for a long moment as though sensing something more behind those words than Jack admitted. Finally he nodded. The group readied themselves. Dara tightened her grip on her machete. Sasha checked the few syringes of sedatives she'd brought, and Nadia whispered another prayer. The traffickers laughed around their fire, oblivious to the strangers who were watching them. And Jack's eyes glowed faintly in the half-light of the mangroves. He felt the pull of his instincts, the wolf inside of him, restless, eager, sensing danger, scenting fear. But he forced it back down. They needed strategy, not savagery. We need a diversion, Jack murmured, something to draw them out long enough for us to get the girls out. Mikash nodded slowly. There is a narrow path on the far side. If 2 of us create a distraction here, the others could slip inside through the back. Mikash's hand settled briefly on Jack's shoulder. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. You've seen the fear in the villages. You've heard the silence of the mothers who have lost their daughters. If we succeed tonight, we give them more than their children back. We give them hope. Jack met his eyes. Then let's make sure we do. The plan took shape quickly. Dara and Jack would create the diversion at the front, while Sasha, Nadia, and Bikash slipped along the back road to free the captives. Every detail mattered: timing, signals, escape routes. The Sunabans did not forgive mistakes, and as the sun sank lower, painting the mangrove canopy in streaks of blood-red light, they moved into position. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Somewhere, far off, a tiger's roar rolled across the water like thunder. Whether omen or warning, none of them could say. All they knew was that darkness was falling fast, and with it came the reckoning. Let's bring them home, Jack whispered. And with that they moved into the clearing, mere shadows carrying with them the hope of the children and the wrath of the forest. The mangroves pressed close around them as they moved into position. Jack and Dara crept toward the front of the shack, every step measured. The roots of the trees slick beneath their boots. Across the water, Sasha, Nadia, and Bikash followed the narrow, hidden path that would allow them to approach the back without being seen. Jack's senses were alive, every nerve tuned to the sounds of the forest. The men outside were laughing, careless, smoking cigarettes and drinking from bottles. But beneath that bravado was lethargy, too comfortable, too certain that they were untouchable. The wolf inside of him stirred, coiling with a predator's patience. He did not release it yet. Timing was everything. Dara crouched beside him, whispering, 3 steps ahead and we'll be in range. Are you ready? Jack nodded, focusing. On my signal. At the back, Sasha motioned to Nadia and Bikash. The shack was old, the boards were warped and splintered. They slipped through the shadows, careful not to make a sound. The makeshift cage sat just a few feet away. Jack raised a hand, signaling Dara. Dara tapped a stick against a root, just enough to make it snap loudly. 2 men outside startled, one rising to investigate. And that was the moment Jack and Dara leapt, rushing forward with controlled fury, catching the men off guard. The wolf rose just beneath his skin, sharpening his reflexes, but the man in him held the leash. Sasha and Nadia moved quickly, opening the makeshift cage. The children froze at first, but the reassuring tones of Sasha's voice and Nadia's gentle touch and Bikash's calm authority calmed the children. We're here to take you home, Sasha whispered. Trust us, and we'll get you out. The first boy stepped out, wide-eyed and trembling. No one noticed as the scuffle in the front ensued. Jack fought with a fury that was driven by his wolf's instincts, and Dara flashed her machete back and forth, striking any man who came too near. Jack tore through the men with a rage that left them dead or running. And from the corner of his eye, Jack saw another figure moving toward the rear. One of the traffickers had noticed the escape and was coming fast. He sprang, catching the man before he could react, pinning him to the ground. The growl that escaped him was primal, terrifying. Yet he maintained control long enough to give Sasha and Nadia time to lead the children toward the boat. And then he snapped the man's neck in two. Dara's voice cut through the chaos. Back to the water, now! The group moved with speed, guiding the children over the slick mud and the tangled roots. Nadia kept the youngest ones close, her soft words steadying their panicked breaths, and Jack covered the rear. At the shoreline, Bikash helped the children climb in, one by one, while Sasha and Nadia followed. Jack and Dara were last, holding the line until every child was safely aboard. The boat pushed off into the channel, water splashing against the hull. Behind them, shouts echoed through the mangroves, frustrated anger from men who had underestimated those that they preyed upon. Jack exhaled slowly, the wolf receding as adrenaline faded. He looked at the children, faces pale but alive, some sobbing quietly, some staring with wide, uncertain eyes. Bikesh placed a hand on his shoulder. Today, we have undone what they thought they could do with impunity, but remember, there will be more. We cannot rest. Jack nodded, glancing at Sasha, Dara, and Nadia. Each bore the same mixture of relief, exhaustion, and grim determination. And as the boat drifted towards safety through the tangled waterway of the Sundarbans, the forest seemed to exhale around them. Tonight, the Tiger King had lost, but the war against the shadows that lurked within the mangroves was far from over. Well, here's the truth behind this story. To combat human trafficking in the Sundarbans, non-governmental organizations are partnering with the local authorities and they focus on rescue operations. And they do perform survivor rehabilitation and community-level empowerment. Grassroots organizations like the Bazarat Initiative for Rural Dedication, that's BIRD is the acronym, that's a real organization, actively work to secure justice for trafficking survivors. They alert law enforcement about missing girls, and they assist the survivors with legal procedures, including filing complaints against the traffickers. They provide vital support for the survivors. It includes counseling and skill building and education to get them out of that poor lifestyle. They help reintegrate the survivors into the communities, many of which, well, they face significant trauma, and then there's, like we talked about, the social stigma. To prevent trafficking, programs are being put in place to educate the school-aged children on how to recognize trafficking risks and to stay safe. Local communities are, they're putting together programs such as the Child Protection Committees. These groups act as liaisons with the police and the government officials to better protect the local youth.
Thank you for listening to this week's story, and I hope you'll join us next week when we are back again with more stories for you. For the past 2 years, it's been an incredible journey sharing stories with you here on the Hidden Corners, and we've loved every moment of exploring the mysteries, the legends, and the adventures, but even storytellers need a little time to rest and recharge. I'm sure you've noticed that I haven't been around much the last couple weeks. And I just needed to take a short break to breathe and reflect and gather fresh inspiration. But don't worry, we'll be back with brand new stories and adventures, and it'll be worth the wait. Thank you for being part of this community and for supporting us week after week. Your enthusiasm is what is keeping the Hidden Corners alive. And I just appreciate your patience with my needing to take a little break. So stay curious, and we will see you soon.